Make sure to be a member on the channel, link is in the description. Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the F-16. So let's first thank our members. Thank you Astropub, Patrick, Vronovsky, Silami, Lafush and Vivi, helps a lot. Make sure to be a member if you want to help the channel. Make sure to subscribe and join our Discord. So let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about the F-16 after the MiG-29 video actually did pretty alright for the channel. And a lot of people were asking for the F-16. I did a vote last week on the Tornado, the F-16, the MiG-31 and the F-111. So we are going to talk a little bit about the F-16. Maybe next week the Tornado, probably going to do another vote, but still. So let's talk a little bit about it first. The performance of the aircraft, the general idea behind the aircraft. After that we're going to talk about its versions, all of them basically. Then we are going to talk about the users that can be, there's so many users, and I'm not going to talk about every single one of them. I'm going to talk about the countries that we have in War Thunder and what versions that they should receive initially and after a year, after 2 years, after the future to the F-16 to actually be able to fight 4th plus generation aircraft and stuff like that when we get that a long time from now. So the idea behind the F-16 was an evolution, basically an evolution from the F-5. It was supposed to be a light fighter. The general idea behind it was basically the same, not that it was actually an evolution from the F-5, but you know what I mean. It's basically a light fighter, very, very light, very cheap to build, and just, the idea was dogfighter, was a light, very highly produced dogfighter, so you can sell to a large amount of countries as well. And the main thing is to be cheap, because the F-15 was becoming kind of a pain in the ass because of the price, and the F-14 was basically way too expensive as well. So the objective was a cheap, light, easy to build frontline fighter, dogfighter, BVR comes later, the objective was AIM-9s and the Vulcan with fly-by-wires, this new type of technology that was very new at the time, and minimal electronics, a simple radar, simple construction. It even had interchangeable ailerons. The engine was the Pratt & Whitney F100 initially, which is the PW200 version initially with 108 kilonewtons. Initially it could get to 300 meters per second of climb, but it would be like 200 and something basically in War Thunder standards. And remember, the first shot with an AIM-7 in an F-16C, for example, after a test with the F-16A was in 1989. This aircraft actually entered in service in 1978, 79. So it is basically 10 years, basically the whole Cold War production variants and stuff like that didn't use any BVR. They were supposed to be basically a dogfighter light, as I said, so no BVR, no anything like that. It was designed to pull 6.5 Gs with full loads and 9 Gs with low fuel and stuff. So 9 Gs pretty good, very similar limit to the, basically the same limit as the MiG-29. This is operational limit, of course. In War Thunder we will have more than that. It was basically to counter stuff like a MiG-21, for example, or aircraft like that can turn very well and that are very hard to see in the sky, so very small because of that. Exported to many countries, like many countries. Even the countries actually waited to see, the European countries actually waited to see if the USAF actually made a decision about if they were going to buy either the YF-17 or the YF-16 back in the day, which the YF-17 was the prototype to the F-18, basically, kind of. It wasn't exactly that, but it did the competition against the F-16 and it lost, and then they developed into the F-18 later because the countries in Europe needed a replacement to the F-104. So if you remember the F-104 or the F-5, you're going to see a lot on these, that a lot of countries actually had the F-104 or the F-5, and they wanted a similar type of cheap aircraft that they can build and on their own actually. So even the Netherlands built them a little bit and stuff like that, because of obviously engines comes from Canada and other stuff from the US, but they mounted them on the Netherlands and Belgium and stuff like that. So very cool. And the first F-16s, they were delivered, as I said, in January 79. Basically, they were delivered in August 78 or something like that, but they actually entered in full service in 79. So basically the same era of the MiG-29. That's why a lot of people actually talk about this aircraft comparable to the MiG-29. But to be honest, they are not really that comparable. They are different. I would say the MiG-29 is a gap. It's in the gap between an F-16 and an F-15. A lot closer to the F-16, but it is more capable than the F-16 in general. You know, it's made to be a little bit more better, a little bit better. You know, it has BVR since the beginning. The radar was better. Everything was kind of better, but it was also a more expensive aircraft than the F-16, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's basically a gap between the F-15 and the F-16. I think the MiG-29 would be like that, but with different variants and more advanced variants, we can have a counter to the MiG-29 here. So yeah, or even the F-15 can be the counter to the MiG-29, but this is one of the options, you know. So yeah, basically this is it. 79 deliveries went to Denmark, Norway, Israel in January 80, you know, July 80. The name was Fighting Falcon was officially adopted, which was basically changed afterwards to Falcon by the pilots, I think, or something like that. So yeah, anyway, this is the aircraft, you know, lightweight, very nimble, fly-by-wire, one of the first aircraft to enter with this. Even though aircraft like the MiG-29 had computers and stuff like that, they were not a complete system of fly-by-wire. So this would be a little bit different than in what we see normally, you know. But yeah, basically this is it for the performance, and let's talk a little bit about the versions. We have a lot of versions. So initially we have the A and B, the C and D later, and then the E and F even later than that. So the same way as in the MiG-29, you have subvariants. So in the MiG-29 we had that type of system of 912, 913, 915, anything like that. And in the F-16 it's the good old block system. So we have the block 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and which with each blocks you have better versions with different stuff and stuff like that. So initially we have the A's and B's. So all the A's will be single seat fighters, and all the B's will be basically trainers. Okay, this is different from the C and D. Sometimes the D sometimes can be of a radar operator right in the back, you know, a weapons operator, so officer, you know, so it's a little bit different than that. But the A and B, the A is the single fighter and the B is the trainer basically. So first things first, the block 1, designed in the 70s, the idea behind this in the 60s, you know, you can identify it by the black radome that he had. So it was kind of a sore thumb sometimes, and they change it on the Black 5 onwards, but it has the black radome. It has the normal APG-66, you know. Basically, I think it would be the same radar that we have in the Kai. So it doesn't have TWS, doesn't have anything. It has literally no BVR, only the AIM-9P and AIM-9P4s, you know, AIM-9Ls, and the Vulcan are the weapons, and obviously some dumb bombs and stuff like that. You would have some type of a very good HUD. It has the bubble canopy, everything like that. But in this first variants, they changed a little bit of the fuselage and stuff like that, the structure, but it doesn't change too much, you know. So yeah, this is the Block 1 first variant. Not many were built, but yeah, like an F5 on steroids, basically. So yeah, the pylons were basically 6 for AIM-9s, you know. And then it could carry also the fuel tanks, you know. So yeah, the Block 5 is the second variant in 1979. Basically, had no the black radome, it doesn't have it. The differences with the Block 1 are inconspicuous, basically, involving modifications to improve reliability and mission-ready rate, stuff like that. So it doesn't change much, you know. It's just a little bit tiny modification that they did in the same year. After that, the Block 10 in 1980. Differences from the Block 5 are the internal improvements. I mean, the external modifications are no apparent, you know. They're none basically, but they got some internal modifications like avionics and stuff like that. But it doesn't change much. It's basically the same aircraft, you know. So the 1, 5, and 10 are basically the same aircraft, but with a tiny little bit changes, you know. Even some 5s were upgraded to 10 standard or even to 15 standard, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So there are some changes in that. But yeah, and even a fun fact is that 24 F-16 A's and B's Block 10s aircraft from New York A&G were briefly modified to carry the GPU-5 A 30mm gun pod. So they decided to test it out as a CAS variant of the F-16 with the 30mm gun pod. I think it's the same pod that you can carry on the F-5. So this could be a premium variant or something like that. That would be fun, but in real life they decided to not use that because it was basically useless. But anyway, it didn't have software for the bullet drop and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not that good. But yeah, 1981, Block 15. This is the first very good I mean, operational-wise version, you know. So it was actually the first one that it had got a little bit of a better radar, and technically could carry BVR. As I said, they didn't basically use the BVRs. They basically used the A9s only until 1988, 1989, but it was capable of doing BVR. It had more ordnance, more hard points for bombs and stuff like that as well. And the main feature of the radar was the TWS, so it's the first APG-66 that actually has TWS. So this version is one of the versions that you're going to see later in the users versions that we can receive in War Thunder a lot, because it's the first version that actually can carry BVR. It had BVR, you know. So yeah, pretty cool. You have the Block 15 OCU, which was a 1987 basically upgrade to the 15s, and some A's were actually built under that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. With the modifications were had a more reliable engine, a HUD of the F-16C, so a more reliable HUD, more structural strengthness, AGM-65s, AIM-120s, avionics. So a lot of was changes to just make the A's basically standard to the C's, you know. That I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So 1987, of course, a lot later than the other ones, but basically the Block 15 was the last proper A and B version, you know, because we have still the Block 20, which is the Taiwanese Block 15 that brought to MLU standards, that I'm going to talk a little bit about it later as well, which are some mid-life upgrades of the F-16, but still the last version of the A was the 15. Okay, so this is probably the version that we are going to see more. As I said, it has many upgrades and many versions, but the Block 15 is basically the latest version of the A and B. After that, we got the C and D, which is the Block 25 until the Block 52. So this is the more known version of the S16. It doesn't change much in the outside aspect of it, but it had some various upgrades that we're going to talk about. First, the Block 25, a 1984 upgrade, the first C and D variants, with a better engine. I think it had close to 130 kilonewtons already, 120, something like that. Better avionics, so it had even the start of some type of digital screens and stuff like that. APG-68 radar, which is a better radar, still pulse Doppler, not a PESA radar, not a EASA radar, but still very, very capable, very date standard, you know, with air-to-ground and stuff like that. TWS, it has internal ECM, so it was one of the first ones that had internal ECM, if I'm not mistaken. So if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. As I said, even though he entered service in 1984, in 1985, they actually just used AIM-9s until basically 1989, 90, 1990. So yeah, the standard weapons of the Cold War of the F-16s are the AIM-9s, okay, for air-to-air. That's the only thing that they used. In 1985, they started with two variants, the package of two variants. So the next three variants, we will have that. So we have the Block 30 and the Block 32, both of them from 1985. They actually decided to have two engines depending on the customer and depending on various things. One was more reliable and one was more cheaper. I don't know exactly the differences. I'm not gonna get too much into it because if I do, the video will have 40 minutes and I don't want to be that long. But basically we have the Block 30 and Block 32. The Block 30 will have the General Electric F101 DFE engine, redesignated F110, which is a commonly known engine. And the Block 32 had the normal Pratt & Whitney F100 engine. They both had basically the same power, but because of the intake of the engines, sometimes one of them would have more power, and this is a change on the F110. It had 2.2 kilonewtons more, or 2,200 kilograms of force more. And basically the only difference between the 25 and 30 is that, the radar and stuff like that is the APG-68, air-to-ground modes, DWS, etc., better avionics and stuff like that. And in some versions, he later received the AGM-35 Strike and the AGM-88 Harm, which would be used in Wild Weasel missions as well. So probably with the D variant. So pretty cool. This is 1985, so this would be the normal versions in the middle of the 80s. This would be probably comparable to the MiG-29S, or something like that, or the 913. I mean, basically the 913, the latest version of the A, probably something like that. Obviously, it has the capabilities of using BVR, but as I said before, only in the late 80s. Another thing, Block 40 and Block 42 has the same principle, 1989, but the same principle. So it had the Block 40 had the General Electric F110, and the Block 42 has the Pratt & Whitney F100. Now they basically had the same power, but still, it's no, they didn't have yet, sorry. But still, it's a version late 80s, obviously would carry the Sparrow and the AIM-120 later. But the modifications were basically in all the other systems. So it has the Laterne navigation and targeting pod. So basically a navigation and targeting pod similar to a Jaguar in War Thunder. It could be carried with thermals and stuff like that. It had a holographic HUD, GPS together with the INS. Obviously, they used, the more we go into the future, the more they integrated the GPS together with the INS for navigation systems. Obviously, this is not, effective in War Thunder, but still. And a new radar, the APG-68 version 5, which had automatic terrain, helped with the automatic terrain following. Diffractive optics had the heads-up display, digital flight controls, and so very various amounts of upgrades, and just a better radar, better aircraft in general. It had a better gear, and a longer gear to make it so that you can carry the two under fuselage lantern pods. It even had, after a while, it had even NVD. And I think it was the first that had the monochrome MFDs, similar to what the Russians had with the MiG-29M. So basically the same era, 1987, 88, 89, basically the same era of the MiG-29M. After that, in the early 90s, they received the Block 50 and the Block 52. Together, obviously the same aspect as before. The 50 had the F110 engine, from General Electric, and the Block 52 had the Pratt& Whitney engine. They had the same power, uprated to 129 kilonewtons. So very, very strong for such a light aircraft, and in general a very strong engine, very efficient as well. One of the things that obviously made these aircraft very efficient is that these engines were turbofans. So yeah, even though it was a very small aircraft with very high power, it was an aircraft that was very effective at flying very long, you know, especially with the in-flight refueling systems that already had in place and stuff like that. Obviously, even F4s had that, so obviously the F-16 had that as well. But the Block 50, basically they changed it even more to more modern standards. So 1992, better avionics as well, better RWR, better everything inside the cockpit actually. Even had a laser INS together with GPS updates, you know, so it's very modern stuff. To be honest, this kind of systems, it's hard to see in civil aviation sometimes. But yeah, and later versions of the APG 66 or 68, I mean. So monochrome MFDs still, AGM 84s, AGM 65Ds, AIM-120s, AIM-7 capable JDAMs, wide weasels can be, and it even has a more advanced version, which is the Block 50 or Block 52 Plus, which would have conformal fuel tanks made by the IAI, which is the Israeli company, and even helmet-mounted displays and a better radar. So yeah, this would be the last variant that is used by the US, and it's the most advanced variant. I think it would be similar to maybe basically the MiG-29M, but you know, a little bit better than that. I mean, basically it would make it so that it's comparable to a MiG-29M if the Soviet Union didn't collapse in the early 90s. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it's comparable to a MiG-35 or anything like that, because they have PESA radars or EASA radars, those type of aircraft, you know, J-10s and stuff like that. But still, it is still very capable. The radar is very capable. Still push stopper. Nothing really that fancy, but that wasn't the objective of the fighter. You know, the objective was to be very light, very cheap, and to everybody to use. Over 4,000 of these aircraft were built. So yeah, you can imagine how many of them you can see out there, and many countries. So yeah, pretty cool. And the last variant that I'm going to just talk a little bit about it's the E and F variants, which are called the Block 60s. They are not used by the US, they are used by the United Emirates, Arab Emirates, I think it's called in English, but the UAE, I think it's called, yeah. Basically that country it's the only that used. It has the APG-80 Agile Beam Radar with AESA, so it's very modern. Internal thrust systems, AIM-130 and 2 capable, you know, AGM-154 capable, so it's very modern. It's from the 2004 2005, so yeah, it's very modern. An aircraft that probably we won't see in the far future, only maybe, and it's an aircraft that it doesn't have a country to be in, to be honest. Maybe in Israel, maybe in the US as a premium, but if we had something like this as a premium, we probably will have F-22s and stuff like that already in the game, because this is way too modern for now, and to be honest, in a long time it's going to be way too modern as well. So yeah, basically we have these variants. These are the main variants. So we had some upgrades later, you know. As you see, I talked about it about the OCU package that was making the aircraft of the A variants a little bit more effective, but they made a ton of other upgrades of that. So we have the MLU upgrade, which means to mid-life upgrade. Basically, it maintained all the A's that were produced, because an aircraft was supposed to be actually made to just be to replace the F-16, you know, but nobody never got that. So eventually they did this upgrade to actually make the F-16 last a lot longer and just be more capable in general, be using the A's and B's, you know, still on their arsenal. A lot of countries use that. A lot of the US ones as well, because their force is very, very large. So still, the US got a lot of these upgrades. But yeah, midlife upgrade, maintenance, upgrades, electronics, MFDs. Uh, Upgrades to the APG-66 radar to be able to carry the AIM-120, new RWR, GPS together with INS, but mainly for early A's and B's, so the block 10s, the block 15s, the block 20s, for example. So yeah, basically an upgrade to make it so that it's more comparable to the C variants, the early A's that were produced, so that you don't have to actually put it in the trash, that aircraft. And you have another upgrade, the ADF, the made for the Air National Guard, means Air Defense Fighter upgrade. So it was basically made early. It was basically an early version of to make it so the Air National Guard had an interceptor. So they picked up the F-16As that they had in Bs and made it into interceptors. So the standard was basically Block 15 OCU, but both programs ran in conjunction, and it made so that the APG-66 was upgraded to be able to fire the Sparrow and many other stuff. So it's just an upgrade for air defense, Many aircraft actually had that upgrade, but as you see, it was kind of a customer kind of thing, because depending on the country, they actually decided to use one or the other, or every program was actually, all the programs were actually ran in conjunction, as I said. But yeah, basically this is the normal versions. We have also the F2, the Mitsubishi F2. Of course, I have to talk a little bit about it, because it is basically the Mitsubishi version of the F-16. To be honest, they're very different from each other in certain areas. So, and they're very. The F-2 is the first aircraft to actually use an EASA radar on the world. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to be added in a long time. So, if you are expecting this, together with an F-16A, I would not expect that, to be honest. I think we will take a while to get to an F2 kind of situation, but maybe with early missiles we can have that type of radar, similar to the Kai having a very good radar from the start, and it only had AIM 7Es and AIM 9Ps and stuff, and now we got the AIM 7F, so we basically can be in the same situation as the F4EJ Kai, but still, I think it's too advanced for now. It was basically an F-16C. The base of the design was the F-16C, but it was funded by the Japanese government, made by Mitsubishi and many other Japanese companies. Externally, obviously, beyond the skin of the aircraft, it had larger wings and control surfaces, and the objective was to substitute the F1, the Mitsubishi F1. The engine was the General Electric F110 with 129 kilonewtons, and a lot of domestic design, a lot of domestic Japanese tech, including the IASA radar from Mitsubishi Electric, the Melco. So I think it's called the Melco. I don't know, or the Melco is the Mitsubishi company. I don't know. It's really hard to find information about this, but anyway, it was in the middle of the 90s. It was supposed to be flown as a interceptor slash air superiority fighter. So it is just a very, very, very capable aircraft, and it was, yeah, pretty good. The first flight was in 95, and it basically entered in production 1999 until 2011. So yeah, 1999, man, it's 1999. It's very, very late design. But it is one of the most advanced versions of the F-16, if you can call an F-16 that. But yeah, basically these are all the variants, all the weapons and stuff. Obviously, They had the capabilities of using the AIM-9 as the primary weapon. Early AIM-9s like the AIM-9P, AIM-9P4, AIM-9L, later the AIM-9M, AIM-7F, AIM-7M, AIM-120A, B, and C, some versions of the C as well. Air-to-ground weapons would be the Mark 80 type bombs, you know. Some laser-guided bombs obviously would be used in real life, but after I think it was the 30, I think the 40, Block 40 version onwards, we could receive even laser-guided bombs like the GBU-12 or something like that, because it has the own designation pod. So yeah, and obviously it has the capability of being a wide whistle sometimes and stuff like that. The radar normally is 30 to 40%, depending on the version, less capable in range as the MiG-29, but it's still a very capable radar, very good, very sensitive for blind speed, so it is a very capable radar. It's just very small, and you know, it depends on the version of the radar, but they are not the most amazing radars ever. Comparable to the 4th gen stuff that we are going to get, you know. Still, the Kai, for example, has one of the best radars in the game, and it works perfectly, you know. So I don't think it would make too much of a change, you know. But yeah, and last but not least, we are going to talk about, to wrap it up the video, the F-16's users in War Thunder. So many countries use this aircraft. Let me tell you about it. Bahrain, Belgium, Chile, Denmark, Egypt, Greece, Indonesia, Iraq, Israel, Italy, Jordan, Morocco, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, Poland, Portugal, the Republic of China, Romania, Singapore, South Korea, Thailand, the Netherlands, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, United States of America, obviously, and I think Venezuela, I think. Yeah. A lot of countries used. A lot of countries actually wanted to buy this aircraft. Like Iran actually had an order for this aircraft, of many of these aircraft, but they were actually cancelled after the Islamic Revolution there. So yeah, it's kind of a weird situation there, but still, some of them actually were introduced into the Israeli service. So pretty cool. But let's talk about War Thunder. So there's many nations, and there are some that are in War Thunder. So first of all, let's talk about the USA, obviously, because it is the main nation that should receive that. It is the main nation that actually used the F-16, and it's the main nation that had basically every single modification of the F-16. So yeah, I think first of all we should see a Block 1, yeah, a Block 1 as a premium or an event vehicle. Not right now, maybe, just like the MiG-29B that I already talked about in the MiG-29 video, an exported variant. We can see a Block 1 being an exported variant as a premium or an event vehicle in the future. You will not have anything in BVR, you know. It only has the normal APG-66, 108 kilonewtons, so it's very weak compared to the other F-16s. And yeah, it's just a cool little aircraft that can be added, maybe only with the normal AIM-9Ps, maybe the AIM-9P4s, maybe the AIM-9Ls, depending on the BR, depending on everything. But I think even with the AIM-9Ps, the normal ones, you can be adding these as an event vehicle as early as now, or a premium vehicle. But I don't know if I agree with that, but still, it's an aircraft that can be added. Second, I think under the F5E, obviously, I think we should see the Block 15 OCU with the ADF package, which would make the Block 15, which is the main version of the A's, you know, being able to carry the AIM-7F, the AIM-7M maybe in the future, AIM-9P4s and AIM-9Ls, maybe in the future AIM-9Ms. So basically, it would carry all the weapons that we already have in game, plus a little bit more if needed to be able to counter something, or to be able to be balanced, you know. Another thing, obviously, the APG-66 with TWS, AGM-65, 108 kilonewtons engines. Maybe the MLU package would make it so that it's a little bit more capable, even having the ability to have a better radar and better RWR and stuff like that in game. You know, it would make a little bit of a change. But yeah, basically this would be the main variant that we should receive right now, I think, or in the future when the MiG-29, for example, is added. This would be the main variant, you know, right now, not talking about the future. In the future, 1 year from now, when we have MiG-29s and Su-27s flying around and stuff like that, we can receive the Block 40 or Block 42, and the Block 50 and 52 even later than that. The Block 40 and 42 would make it so that it's one of the first ones to receive the AIM-120 or something like that. Maybe the early versions of the 120 that don't have that much range and stuff like that, together to counter the R-77 or something like that on the MiG-29, or even more modern aircraft than that. And the Block 50 or 52 to actually be countering the MiG-29M, for example, or the SMT-2, or the normal SMT, because the SMT-2 would have the PESA radar, which I think it would be too OP against this, but still, you can receive that. They would have basically the same amount of missiles, almost 6 to 8 missiles, so they would have a very good thing. So for the US, Block 1 as a premier event, Block 15 OCU with the ADF package as the normal Tech 3 under the F5E. After that, the Block 40 or 42, and then after that, Block 50 or 52, but this is way in the future, not right now. For the Republic of China, I think the objective of China was to replace the F5E and F104G. So they only basically had one version. They actually tried to buy the F-16C, but they only had the Block 20, which is a Block 15 OCU together with MLU package, together with the APG-66 V3 radar. It was capable of using the AIM-7M, so it was probably capable of using AIM-7F. It used the AIM-9P4, and later in its life used the AIM-9M, so that could be a thing as well. Right now the P4, maybe in the future the AIM-9M. AGM-65, AIM-120 obviously, but in the future. Lantern, so you can use laser guided stuff, you know. And maybe in the future you can have an upgrade to Block 70, which would have an ASA radar and a lot of changes on the aircraft, so even that can be changed to be a more competitive aircraft in the far future, like 2 to 3 years from now, I don't know, you know. But right now I think the Block 15 OCU ADF for the US, Block 20, which is a Block 15 OCU with the MLU package to the Chinese. For Japan, obviously the Mitsubishi F2, but not right now. I think in the far future. I already talked about it, so I'm not gonna get into it much, you know. But has the AM-3 and a lot of other missiles and stuff like that. But it's too advanced for now. I don't think we should get it. Italy should receive the Block 15 ADF as well, which was used by Italy because it was a stopgap until they received the Eurofighter Typhoon. So yeah, maybe they can use the Aspide. I don't know if in real life he could actually use the Aspide missile. Probably just the AIM-120 and the AIM-9L. But still, it is a Lend-Lease refurbished version of the Block 15. So yeah, they can basically, it was a Lend-Lease after all. So they can use maybe the Aspide, you know. I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't find any information about it. But if it use it, it would be nice to see the Italy using only 2 Aspides, because remember the early F-16As that received this Sparrow, they only are able to carry 2 Sparrows, so they would be able to be carrying 2 Aspides or 2 AIM-7Fs in the case of China's and in China and US. So yeah, 2 missiles, radar guided, and 4 AIM-9s. And Israel, technically the last nation, could receive the Block 5 that was turned into the Block 10, but only with AIM-9s, so it is pretty cool to have that, you know, only AIM-9s, Python 3s maybe in the future, but it was too advanced, I think. The Block 30, after a while, you know, one of the Cs that we can see, together maybe with the Block 40 coming to the US, you can have the Block 30 with a more advanced version of the MiG-29, with the F4F ICE coming, with more advanced versions of some aircraft, or maybe the Mirage 2000 coming. We can see aircraft like this probably used the AIM-7s and the AIM-9s as well later in its life, but probably only I mean, maybe they use the M7s, but probably on the M120. As I said, only late 80s, early 90s they actually used the BVR missiles. Before that, they normally used only M9s. And even the Israel used the Block 52 also, but it was a different version. It can be the Block 52, the 50 or 52 normal for the US, the C, and the D variant for the Israeli, because they only use the D variant for the Block 52. So, and it's a different version because I don't know if all the Ds were like that, but the D version from Israel was the back seat was a weapon system operator, so pretty cool. Same as in an F4 or an F14. Obviously, they used Python 4s, Python 5s, internal mods, and better radars, better stuff, better, a lot of stuff like that can be used later and stuff like that. M120s, you can have many variants and many, not variants, but many things that the F-16 actually can use in many nations. And the last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about Sweden. Norway used the Block 1, 5, 10, and 15, which can be used as a Swedish aircraft technically. So if they want to, and if nothing is added until the Gripen comes, they actually can add a Block 5, for example, or Block 10, or even the Block 15 with Sparrows maybe, and M9 P4s, I don't know. To be a Swedish aircraft. I don't know if I would like to see that, but if Sweden actually needs something, I think we should see the vegan D, but still, and maybe the RB74 for the JA37C right now, the active vegan, the normal one that we have. But if there's something, if there is a need for an aircraft, Norway could step in and be inside Sweden, just like Finland is. So I don't know about that, but still, yeah. Let's recap. So, I think right now we probably should see only the A's, the Block 15s max, So in the future we can see more stuff like that, like the Block 40, 50 and stuff like that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. We talked about basically every single version. Not talking about too much on the prototypes or anything like that, because I really kind of don't like that. But if you really want to, I might do a video like that. The F-16-79, for example, it's a pretty cool aircraft. That was a cheaper version of the F-16, but still very cool. And I think it is just a matter of time until we see the F-16. So I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, and I see you guys on the next one. So bye, guys.